Chapter 9. Prof listened to my explanation with thoughtful eyes. Yes, he said as I finished. I should have seen this. It makes sense. I relaxed. I'd been afraid he'd be furious. What's the address, son? Prof asked. 1532 Ditko Place, I said. It was carved into the steel around a park in one of the nicer areas of the understreets. It's small, but I live alone. I keep it locked tight. Enforcement won't need a key, Prof said. Cody, Abraham, go to this place. Set a firebomb, make sure nobody is inside, and blow the entire room. I felt a sudden jolt of alarm, as if someone had hooked up my toes to a car battery. What? We can't have Steelheart getting that information, son, Prof said. Not just the information about us, but the information on the other epics you collected. If it's as detailed as you say, he could use it against the other powerful epics in the region. Steelheart already has too much influence. We need to destroy that intel. You can't, I exclaimed, my voice echoing in the narrow, steel-walled tunnel. Those notes were my life's work. Sure, I hadn't been around that long, but still, 10 years of effort? Losing it would be like losing a hand. Given the option, I'd rather lose the hand. Son, Prof said, don't push me. Your place here is fragile. You need that information, I said. It's important, sir. Why would you burn hundreds of pages of information about the powers of epics and their possible weaknesses? You said you gathered it through hearsay, Tia said, her arms crossed. I doubt there's anything in it that we don't know already. Do you know Nightwielder's weakness? I asked, desperate. Nightwielder. He was one of Steelheart's high-epic bodyguards, and his powers created the perpetual darkness over Nukago. He was a shadowy figure himself, completely incorporeal, immune to gunfire or weapons of any kind. No, Tia admitted, and I doubt you do either. Sunlight, I said. He becomes solid in sunlight. I've got pictures. You have pictures of Nightwielder in corporeal form? Tia asked. I think so. The person I bought them from wasn't certain, but I'm reasonably sure. Hey, lad, Cody called. You want to buy Loch Ness from me? I'll give you a good price. I glared at him, and he just shrugged. Loch Ness was in Scotland, I knew that much, and it seemed that the crest on Cody's cap might be some kind of Scottish or English deal. But his accent didn't match. Prof, I said, turning back to him. Phaedrus, sir, please. You have to see my plan. Your plan? He didn't seem surprised that I'd worked out his name. For killing Steelheart. You have a plan? Prof asked. For killing the most powerful epic in the country? That's what I told you before. I thought you wanted to join us to get us to do it. I need help, I said, but I didn't come empty-handed. I've got a detailed plan. I think it will work. Prof just shook his head, looking bemused. Suddenly, Abraham laughed. I like him. He has something. Un homme téméraire. You sure we aren't recruiting, Prof? Yes, Prof said flatly. At least look at my plan before you burn it, I said. Please. John, Tia said, I'd like to see these pictures. They're likely fake, but even so. Fine, Prof said, tossing something to me. The magazine for my rifle. Change of plans. Cody, you take Megan and the boy and go to his place. If enforcement is there and it looks like they're going to take this information, destroy it. But if the site looks safe, bring it back. He eyed me. Whatever you can't carry easily, destroy. Understood? Sure, Cody said. Thank you, I said. It's not a favor, son, Prof said. And I hope it's not a mistake, either. Go on, we may not have much time before they track you. It was getting quiet in the understreets by the time we neared Ditko's place. You'd think that with the perpetual darkness, there wouldn't really be a day or a night in Nukago, but there is. People tend to want to sleep when everyone else sleeps, so we settle into routines. Of course, there are a minority who don't like to do as told, even when it comes to something simple. I was one of those. Being up all night means being awake when everyone else is sleeping. It's quieter, more private. The ceiling lights were set to a clock somewhere, and they colored to deeper shades when it was night. The change was subtle, but we learned to notice it. So even though Ditko Place was near the surface, there wasn't much motion on the streets. People were sleeping. We arrived at the park, a large underground chamber carved from the steel. It had numerous holes in the ceiling for fresh air, and blue-violet lights shone from spotlights around the rim. The center of the tall chamber was cluttered with rocks brought in from outside. Real rocks, not ones that had been turned to steel. There was also wooden playground equipment, moderately well maintained, that had been scavenged from somewhere. In the daytime, the place would fill with children, the ones too young to work, or the ones with families who could afford not to have them work. Old women and men would gather to knit socks or do other simple work. Megan raised her hand to still us. "Mobiles?" she whispered. Cody sniffed. "Do I look like some amateur?" he asked. "It's on silent." I hesitated, then took mine off the place on my shoulder and double-checked. Fortunately, it was on silent. Megan quietly moved out of the tunnel and across the park toward the shadow of a large rock. Cody went next, and then I followed, keeping low and moving as quietly as I could, passing large stones growing lichen. Up above, a few cars rumbled by on the roadway that ran past the openings in the ceiling. Late-night commuters heading home. Sometimes they'd throw trash down on us. A surprising number of the rich still had ordinary jobs. Accountants, teachers, salesmen, computer technicians. Though Steelheart's data net was open only to his most trusted. I'd never seen a real computer, just my mobile. It was a different world above, and jobs that had once been common were now held only by the privileged. The rest of us worked factories or sewed clothing in the park while watching children play. I reached the rock and crouched beside Cody and Megan, who were stealthily inspecting the two far walls of the chamber, where the dwellings were cut. Dozens of holes in the steel provided homes of various sizes. Metal fire escapes had been harvested from unused buildings above and set up here to give access to the holes. "So, which one is it?" Cody asked. I pointed. "See that door on the second level, far right? That's it." "Nice," Cody said. "How'd y'all afford a place like this?" He asked it casually, but I could tell that he was suspicious. They all were. Well, I suppose that was to be expected. "I needed a room by myself for my research," I said. "The factory where I work saves all your wages when you're a kid, then gives them to you in 4 yearly chunks when you hit 18. It was enough to get me a year in my own room." "Cool," Cody said. I wondered if my explanation passed his test or not. "It doesn't look like enforcement has made it here yet. Maybe they couldn't match you from the description." I nodded slowly, though beside me Megan was looking around, her eyes narrowed. "What?" I asked. "It looks too easy. I don't trust things that look too easy." I scanned the far walls. There were a few empty trash bins and some motorbikes chained up beside a stairwell. Some chunks of metal had been etched by enterprising street artists. They weren't supposed to do that, but people encouraged them quietly. It was one of the only forms of rebellion the common people ever engaged in. "Well, we can wait staring here until they do come," Cody said, rubbing his face with a leathery finger. "Or we can just go. Let's be on with it." He stood up. One of the large trash bins shimmered. "Wait," I said, grabbing Cody and pulling him down, my heart leaping. "What?" he said, anxious, unslinging his rifle. It was of a very fine make, old but well maintained, with a large scope and a state-of-the-art suppressor on the front. I'd never been able to get my hands on one of those. The cheaper ones worked poorly, and I found it too hard to aim with them. "There," I said, pointing at the trash bin. "Watch it." He frowned, but did what I asked. My mind raced, sorting through fragments of remembered research. I needed my notes. Shimmering, illusionist epic. Who was that? Refractionary, I thought, seizing on a name. A Class C illusionist with personal invisibility capabilities. "What am I watching for?" Cody asked. "Did you get spooked by a cat or something?" He cut off as the bin shimmered again. Cody frowned, then crouched down farther. "What is that?" "An epic," Megan said, her eyes narrowing. Some of the lesser epics with illusion powers have trouble maintaining an exact illusion. Her name is Refractionary, I said softly. She's pretty skilled, capable of creating complex visual manifestations. But she's not terribly powerful, and her illusions always have tells to them. Usually they shimmer, as if light is reflecting off them. Cody aimed his rifle, sighting on the trash bin. So you're saying that bin isn't really there? It's hiding something else? Enforcement officers, probably? I guess so, I said. Can she be harmed by bullets, lad? Cody asked. Yeah, she's not a high epic, but Cody, she might not be in there. You just said she's a Class C illusionist, I explained, but her secondary power is Class B personal invisibility. Illusions and invisibility often go hand in hand. Anyway, she can make herself invisible, but not anything else. Others she has to create an illusion around. I'd be certain she's hiding an enforcement squad in that fake trash bin illusion, but if she's smart, and she is, she'll be somewhere else. I felt an itch in the small of my back. I hated illusionist epics. You never knew where they would be. Even the weakest of them, Class D or E by my own notation system, could make an illusion big enough for themselves to hide in. If they had personal invisibility, it was even worse. There, Megan whispered, pointing toward a large piece of playground equipment, a kind of wooden fort for climbing. See those boxes on the top of that playground tower? They just shimmered. Someone's hiding in them. That's only big enough for one person, I whispered. From that position, whoever is there could see right into my apartment through the door. Sniper? Most likely, Megan said. Refractionary is close then, I said. She'll need to be able to see both that playground equipment and the fake garbage bins to keep the illusions going. The range on her powers isn't great. How do we draw her out? Megan said. She likes to be involved, from what I remember, I said. If we can get the enforcement soldiers to move, she'll stay close to them, in case she needs to give orders or make illusions to support them. Sparks, Cody whispered. How do you know all this, lad? Weren't you listening? Megan asked softly. This is what he does. It's what he's built his life around. He studies them. Cody stroked his chin. He looked as if he'd assumed everything I'd said before was bravado. You know her weakness? It's in my notes, I said. I'm trying to remember. Well, illusionists usually can't see if they turn themselves completely invisible. They need light to strike their irises, so you can watch for the eyes. But a really skilled illusionist can make their eyes match the color of their surroundings. But that's not really her weakness, more a limitation of the illusions themselves. What was it? Smoke! I exclaimed, then blushed at the sound of it. Megan shot me a glare. It's her weakness, I whispered. She always avoids people who are smoking and stays away from any kind of fire. It's pretty well known and reasonably substantiated as far as epic weaknesses go. Guess we're back to starting the place on fire after all, Cody said. He seemed excited by the prospect. What? No. Prof said. We can still get the information, I said. They're waiting for me, but they only sent a minor epic. That means they want me, but they haven't sorted through that the Reckoners were behind the assassination tonight. Or maybe they don't know how I was involved. They probably haven't cleaned out my room yet, even if they did break in and scan through what's there. Excellent reason to burn the place, Megan said. I'm sorry, but if they're that close... But you see, it's essential that we go in now, I said, growing more anxious. We have to see what has been disturbed, if anything. That'll tell us what they've discovered. We burn the place down now and we blind ourselves. The other two hesitated. We can stop them, I said, and we might be able to kill us an epic in the process. Refractionary has plenty of blood on her hands. Just last month, someone cut her off in traffic. She created an illusion of the road turning up ahead and drove the offender off the freeway and into a home. 6 dead. Children were in the car. Epics had a distinct, even incredible, lack of morals or conscience. That bothered some people on a philosophical level. Theorists, scholars, they wondered at the sheer inhumanity many epics manifested. Did the epics kill because Calamity chose, for whatever reason, only terrible people to gain powers? Or did they kill because such amazing power twisted a person, made them irresponsible? There were no conclusive answers. I didn't care. I wasn't a scholar. Yes, I did research, but so did a sports fan when he followed his team. It didn't matter to me why the epics did what they did, any more than a baseball fan wondered at the physics of a bat hitting a ball. Only one thing mattered. Epics gave no thought for ordinary human life. A brutal murder was a fitting retribution, in their minds, for the most minor of infractions. Prof didn't approve of hitting an epic, Megan said. This isn't in the procedures. Cody chuckled. Killing an epic is always in the procedures, lass. You just haven't been with us long enough to understand. I have a smoke grenade in my room, I said. What? Megan asked. How? I grew up working in a munitions plant, I said. We mostly made rifles and handguns, but we worked with other factories. I got to pick up the occasional goodie from the QC reject pile. A smoke grenade is a goodie? Cody asked. I frowned. What did he mean? Of course it was. Who wouldn't want a smoke grenade when offered one? Megan actually showed the faintest of smiles. She understood. I don't get you, girl, I thought. She carried explosives in her shirt and was an excellent shot, but she was worried about procedures when she got a chance to kill an epic? And as soon as she caught me looking at her, her expression grew cold and aloof once again. Had I done something to offend her? If we can get that grenade, I can use it to negate Refractionary's powers, I said. She likes to stay near her teams. So if we can draw the soldiers into an enclosed space, she'll probably follow. I can blow the grenade, then shoot her when it makes her appear. Good enough, Cody said. But how are we going to manage all that and get your notes? Easy, I said, reluctantly handing my rifle to Megan. I'd have a better chance of fooling them if I wasn't armed. We give them the thing they're waiting for. Me.